So, call to order a meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Would you like to start with the roll call, Catherine?
Sure. Stacy Ashland. Deidre Cromie.
Here.
Jennifer Hedderly.
Here.
Ed Lowing.
Here.
Abby Knopper.
Here.
Pat Markovich.
Here.
Keith Rechtel. Greg Schmidt.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda, requests, or deletions? Looks like no. How about oral comment? Anyone, member of the public, interested in just addressing the commission on any subject that's not on the agenda? If so, please get in a card. Looks like not. So we're on our first item of business, approval of draft minutes from the January 21st, 2014 meeting. Do we have any edits or revisions to the minutes? Commissioner Markovich.
Hello. Page 34, line 1383 at the top. I said that you don't have a funding source for the mitigation, not planning. Funding instead of planning. And that was the end of the sentence, so the word anything at that end should just be deleted because it doesn't make sense. That's it.
Any others?
500K.
No? All right, we're good to go on the minutes. We're going to be out of here by 8 o'clock. All right, now I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So move.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Then we're on to our next order of business, review and feedback from commission to staff to designate 3 redwood trees at Cogswell Plaza as a memorial grove in honor of Palo Alto police officers lost in the line of duty.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good to see you all. I'm going to ask Peter Jensen actually to kick this one off. It's actually a real honor to bring this forward as a memorial for our police officers that lost their lives in line of duty. We also have Police Chief Dennis Burns in the audience here. He's been very supportive of this, and this actually came out of Canopy, and Urban Cummings is here from Canopy that's going to help with the presentation as well. But I'm going to pass on to Peter.
Good evening, Commissioners. Peter Jensen, landscape architect for the City of Palo Alto. I think you've read the report and know what this project is about. It's about basically establishing a memorial in Cogswell Plaza for police officers. I'm going to introduce and let Urban Cummings from Canopy kind of discuss the history and how this came to be, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit about the plan and what we're proposing to do. So, without any further ado, Mr. Cummings.
See if I get this right. Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to present you with this idea. And it all started because one day, months ago, walking through from City Hall through the police department hallway, I saw these 3 plaques on the wall of 3 officers that died in the line of duty. Excuse me. And being a Canopy, a tree nut to start with, and a Canopy board member, and everything happens at the program committee with Canopy. So it occurred to me that it would be a great idea to plant 3 trees to honor these 3 men who died in the line of duty. So I approached Chief Burns with the idea, and he gave it his blessing. And so I presented to the program committee of Canopy probably 6-8 weeks ago, and they were all in favor of it. So we had a little subcommittee, and Marty Degler and Catherine Martineau and I decided we would scan the parks or the area in general, looking for an appropriate place to plant 3 trees for these officers. It's kind of an emotional thing for me. So we were going to start at Eleanor Pardee Park, and Marty suggested, let's go down to Cogswell and look there. So we came down here early one morning. They didn't look like an appropriate spot to plant 3 trees for this purpose. So just about the time we were leaving, I looked over towards Ramona, and I spot these 3 big, beautiful redwood trees, coast redwoods, sempervirens. And so we walked over there and looked at them and saw that they were near the sidewalk. And the way they're situated, there's 2. Well, you see it in the pictures. There's 2 of them right near the sidewalk, maybe 5 feet away. And then there's a 3rd one back to the rear. So it was like a perfect arrangement to put a plaque here in the center surrounded by the great trees. So then I approached Peter about the idea. And he's done a marvelous, magnificent job. Rob stepped in to help. Everybody's been wonderful about it. So I'm here to answer any questions. It turns out, I'll just add one more thing. It turns out that it's been 20 years since the last police officer, how do you pronounce his name? Brasinga died in the line of duty, and it was May 15th in 1994. So we all decided that 20 years later would be a perfect opportunity to honor these 3 wonderful people, men, police officers. And so we're hoping to be able to put this all together and have the dedication on May 15th. It coincides with the National Police Officers Association recognition of fallen officers and things. So the timing is just like, it's handed to us, just like the redwood trees. Is there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but as much as a comment, I love the idea. I went by there today. I walked past those trees, and it's a perfect spot.
Exactly.
It's a really good choice.
Yeah. We just looked into it. I think there's powers that be that planned all this, and now it's coming together. Thank you very much.
I think we have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Rectal?
I was wondering, I think this, first of all, is a very good idea, and the location is very good. We're not interrupting anything else on the park. That location wasn't used for playing Frisbee or anything else. So I think it is a good location and a good cause. I'm curious, have we lost firefighters or other city employees you know of?
Yeah, good question. That came up in the program committee at Canopy because we didn't want to restrict it to just police officers, but fire department. And Chief Burns, who was the fire chief, as well as the police chief for a period of time there, said that no, there hadn't been a fireman lost in the line of duty. So we certainly would include that. And there's always room for planting another tree. That's my motto. I hope it never happens, but
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you, commissioners.
Any other questions? I also think it's a lovely location and a great idea. I do have a process question just about how Memorial Grove dedications work. Once the city doesn't have to do anything to make it happen, we just approve the design. Is that the story? And then is it protected into perpetuity? Are the trees protected? How does it work procedurally into the long term?
Good evening, Commission. I'm Greg Betts, Director of Community Services. This falls under the city's policy for naming city facilities, including parks and sub-areas of parks. As you may know from some of your experience, if we were going to name a new park, such as Heritage Park, there's an elaborate procedure that involves the Palo Alto Historical Association, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then ultimately the City Council. However, for sub-areas within parks, the procedure allows the Director of Community Services to designate those areas. But like we do for any of our park activities, we always like to have a public component, really for two reasons. One is to inform the public of this very fitting tribute, and also to provide a public opportunity for questions and input and suggestions in getting it absolutely correct. So there is no motion tonight because I'm also in favor of this project, but I'm taking any notes, and tonight's discussion will serve as a public record for this discussion.
Thank you. Commissioner Rectal.
Is this simply a naming, or is this protection? Does this tie our hands down the road if we want to do something else with that park? You know, let's say they wanted to build some other type of park facilities at that location.
No, it is a protection of that grove. There's a similar designated and protective grove of redwood trees at El Camino Park that was created as a memorial or as a tribute to Olympians from Stanford and Palo Alto. And as we've experienced with the redevelopment of El Camino Park, it really didn't impinge on the designs of the baseball field or softball field, but that area was respected as a grove, and we made certain that pathways or the fence lines or lighting did not encroach on that memorial. So in the future, this is a very appropriate area of Cogswell Plaza. We don't envision that there's going to be any need for tables or benches or any type of development in this area that would at any point jeopardize this memorial.
But if this location ended up 40, 50 years from now being inconvenient and we wanted to move it to the other side of the park, or because of some construction issue, would we have that latitude, or are our hands tied?
No, our hands aren't really tied. I can think of one other example at Eleanor Pardee Park. The Daughters of the American or the California Revolution had placed a plaque on a redwood tree that unfortunately died at Eleanor Pardee Park. We would go through a process, and that plaque had been placed there 50 years ago or so. So we would go through a process where we'd reach out to the police department first and foremost, to Canopy and to the commission at the time to suggest an adjustment of the memorial, but trying to keep it in the same location so that there was not a disruption of people wanting to go and pay tribute to those officers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. This is exciting. We'll look forward to seeing it. When do you anticipate placement of the, whatever you call it, sign? Boulder. Plaque. Thank you.
Well, as Mr. Cummings noted, there is some significant dates that it would be nice to have the memorial done on. So we are working in conjunction, Canopy and staff, to get the boulder in place, which I'm hoping that will be within the next few weeks. So it coincides very well with some boulder placement that we're doing at Eleanor Pardee Park. So it shouldn't be a very big issue to get the boulder set in place. The plaque, we will work with Canopy on getting a schedule for how that is made and then mounted on, and setting a date for some type of, I would say, memorial service as well to denote the area. So.
Great.
I think he wants to show pictures.
Do you, anything else? Did you want to show your pictures? Are they the same as what we have in our package?
Well, I think you've seen this in the package, so I mean, this was basically just calling out where it was going to go. I've mocked up something that would look like the boulder and the plaque there, and then the next slide is what the plaque would look like, so something in this size. So I think it's going to depend too on the boulder, the size of the plaque. So it's either going to be a 12 by 12 or 16 by 16 size range. It's just all about the surface and the flat surface that we can get on it. So, but it will be significant and definitely be readable from the sidewalk there, which I think is important for the memorial itself. So,
Yeah, Commissioner Lowing.
I just want to say, first of all, I got to get the microphone here, but I just want to say kudos to Canopy for taking the initiative on this and working with PAPD. Canopy is just a great partner to the city and see it in everywhere. So thanks very much for bringing this to our attention and taking the initiative, and thanks to the chief for cooperating and getting this thing done.
I would like to recognize that Chief Burns is here, and I don't know if he had any words to say about this. But it is nice, the support that's shown for the project itself. So,
good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Burns from the Police Department, and I do want to thank Urban and Canopy, as well as the CSD staff, and Peter for all of his assistance. This is it's an emotional issue, but I think it says a lot about the community that it wants to remember the officers who died in the line of duty. And thank you so much for considering this request. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, then let's move on to agenda item number 3, Parks and Rec, Open Space Trails Master Plan Update and consideration to appoint an ad hoc committee to work on the project.
Good evening again. I'll begin again, and then I'll have Peter join in and talk a little bit about sort of next steps here. But we're finally beginning the city-wide Parks, Trails, Open Space, Recreation Facilities Master Planning process. That's pretty exciting. Just as a reminder, the intent of the master planning process is for the identification and prioritization of short-term, 5 years, mid-term, 10 years, and long-term, 25-year improvements, enhancements, or acquisition of park and recreation facilities, and a strategic funding plan to successfully complete the master plan. The process not only will have a master plan for the entire park system, but there'll also be complementary individual park plans for each of our parks and recreation facilities. The consultant, MIG, has been selected and is on board, and they're reviewing many materials that we've provided them to orient them to Palo Alto. The consultant team has already begun an inventory and a study of the current parks and trails and recreation facilities, as well as our programs and services. An initial all-day tour for the consultant team was conducted on February 11th. To get familiar with Palo Alto, they'll be doing a lot more tours, I expect, in the months ahead. So this evening, we're here to talk about the schedule and primarily focus on the public engagement plan as it's drafted, and to think about and consider how the Commission can be most productively engaged in the process. Also wanted to mention on March 10th will be an important study session with the City Council, and the Parks and Rec Commission is invited to all be there. It'll be here in the chambers at 6 o'clock, and this will be an introduction orientation of the master planning process with MIG presenting, and they'll be talking about the public engagement plan at that time as well. So that's what I had to say, just to sort of get us started, and then I'll ask Peter just to talk a little bit about the timeline and then the public engagement plan.
good evening again, Commissioners. So yes, tonight we're going to focus, I think, our conversation review on reviewing the timeline and the schedule of the project, talking about how the PRC can be integrated and involved in the process of producing the long-range plan, and then reviewing the public engagement plan that has been proposed by the consultant. There is going to be a joint study session with the council on March 10th with the consultant. They're going to get more into the bulk of the plan and how it's produced and what we get from that. And then there will be a more extensive question and answer period that'll kind of talk about the master plan as a whole. With that said, I do want to start with the schedule, just so we have a feeling of what it is, because it is a very long process. It basically takes us from now until August of 2015. That process is broken up into a series of steps. The first step is really happening right now, which is kind of the collection of information and analyzing that information, going to the parks, looking at materials like the comp plan, the bicycle plan, things of that nature, and the consultant becoming familiar basically with all those things so they can start analyzing and then giving us a plan basically at the end. The next step in this is a community engagement part of the process. So that part will start sometime within the next few months and last basically through the summertime. That will engage the community and get feedback from them basically of how this, of their priorities and what they would like to see with the Parks Master Plan and what they find as important. That's very important for our prioritization, because basically this is going to be a process of prioritizing how we want to maintain the parks, what things we would like to add to the parks, and how we would like to expand our park system if that's something that we're interested in doing. And that's kind of what we're going to find out along this process. After that, then the consultant takes all that information basically gathered and starts to draft a long-range report, which will happen in the winter to spring of basically next year, of basically 2015. Then they will basically be bringing that draft back to boards and commissions. You will definitely be involved with that, with reviewing the draft, making comment about the draft. The draft will go through its edits, and then eventually in around August of 2015, then the final draft of the long range or the master plan report will be completed and adopted by council. So that's kind of our process and our timeline and schedule. Let's go to the next slide. So this next slide talks about basically specific meetings that are set up for the Park and Recs Commission. In the packet, you've got this very detailed schedule. It's not the easiest thing to read. So basically what I've done here is I've just combed through that and just set up the dates and the times of when basically the plan will come back to the PRC and what will be discussed at kind of those meetings. So in July of 2014, basically we come back and discuss the public engagement and have a little bit more discussion about that. We also talk about the survey and the demographic study. So this is basically providing feedback to the consultant on these topics right as it kicks off. There will be a community meeting before this, so they will actually be reporting on information as well that they're receiving from the community. The next step then after that is a meeting in January of 2015, and that's to review the kind of community results. So to talk about what was found in the community meetings, the online survey. There's a few other different type of public engagement events that they have set up that they'll get into more detail as we talk about this more, but all that will kind of be covered basically in that January 2015, again, to keep the Park and Recs Commission involved with the process and up to date on what has been found to that time. In March of 2015, then, there will be discussion of the master plan outline. This will also be discussion about the prioritization. At this point, the consultant will start to put a list together of items that they feel are important to add or enhance in our parks and open space and recreational facilities. And that discussion then will be brought to the Parks and Rec Commission to basically flesh those out and make sure that they're on track of what we feel those priorities should be. May 2015, the draft of the master plan report comes. There's a presentation on that, allowing you basically to have comment on the actually written draft of the report itself. And then in August 2015, it comes back again for approval of the report. So those are the main meetings that are set through the schedule for the commission to comment on and provide a review and recommendations of those steps. The next slide that I have. Oh, yes. So this is kind of leads to the next topic that I do want to review tonight, and we can leave it here and talk about this for a while, but how the Parks and Recs Commission would like to see themselves involved further besides the meetings, but with either subcommittees or ad hoc groups. I know that there's been an express interest from the commission to have all the members involved and not try to break it up and just have an ad hoc committee. So, and I would agree with that. I think one ad hoc committee is not enough. So I think there can be multiple, and they can be, again, subcommittees or ad hoc committees that break down different aspects of this process. So what I've started to set up here is just recommendations of what I think those things can be. The first thing is the stakeholder group representative. So that stakeholder group is composed of community members that represents I guess institutions in the city that like Canopy, Actera, things like that, basically, that provide more feedback into the master plan process. I would like one of the Parks and Rec commissioners to be on that stakeholder group, and I think that it's probably deserving of two, just in case someone can't make it, that someone else can come and do a backup for that. The other ones are the Public Engagement Subcommittee. So we're going to talk a little bit about tonight about the plan, but if there's an interest by the commission to have a subcommittee discuss that further and develop that, then that is a proposal as well. One for the community survey and setting up the questionnaire for that. I think that's an important one and can definitely have more of the commission involved with that besides just the meeting it's set up for. And then, of course, the report itself and the draft of that. So those are my proposals for it. I'd like to open up discussion to the commission and kind of have a conversation about how you feel you would like to proceed and be involved basically with the process. So,
Peter, if you don't mind, could we go through the public engagement plan that was in our packet first, because I think people probably, I know I have some questions about that, and then come back around to the ad hoc issue after we've sort of discussed what we have before us already. Great. Were you going to go through this at all? Or? Okay.
We were definitely going to go through that. This is the proposal from the consultant about the public engagement plan. This plan basically focuses on going out to the community and extracting basically information from the community about their feelings about parks and recreation in Palo Alto to give us feedback on how they would like to see this plan assembled. This is a multi-pronged task. It includes, the core of it is community meetings, multiple community meetings centered around developing and again extracting information from the community about what they like about the parks, During those community meetings, there's going to be different tactics used and whatever their games or allowing people to write on chalkboard or other boards to get this information. So there's that aspect of basically the public engagement plan. It also includes a community survey, which we can talk about the development of that and the questionnaires that go out to the entire community. There is a special aspect of it that our consultant provides, which is it's called MAPITA, and it allows people to go online and basically provide information of specific sites in the city to make it easier to understand where we are lacking or have a good amount of recreational opportunities basically throughout the city. The last one is the intercept groups that actually have the consultant or city staff going out to parks or facilities and basically doing face-to-face interactions with the community to get feedback on specific questionnaires that they have. So that's the kind of the structure and the different elements of the engagement plan. That engagement plan will happen from now for the next 4, 5 to 6 months, basically. This proposal is for us to basically comment on and give feedback to the consultant if there's anything else or any further ideas that we have about engagement or trying to get information about our park system. This is the opportunity to kind of discuss that and get feedback from you that I can basically relay back to them to basically revise this a little bit if that's necessary. So.
Thanks. So I had a bunch of questions. I don't know if others had a lot of questions. Do you think, seeing no reaction, should we? Okay, so then why don't we go one by one with questions and comments?
Okay. Thanks, Peter. What does CBO stand for? It's under public information. Number one, content will be shared with CBOs and partner organizations.
Community-based organization.
Community-based organization?
Community-based organization.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And under the project website, is that cityofpaloalto.org? It says just paloalto.org.
Yes. It will be cityofpaloalto.org.
Okay, great,
Yes.
thank you. And the MAPITA inclusion is a really nice tech solution. The intercept activities is an awesome personal approach to this. I really like that and was very impressed with that approach to discuss with people in person. I really like that. So overall, I thought it had excellent coverage, but those were my highlights. Thank you.
Commissioner Ashland, I'm glad you said that last one because the intercept activities is something I think that all the commissioners can participate in, and it's actually getting out on site and with a survey or an iPad and talking to residents in the park, and we would love your help with that.
I'd be glad to be involved. That's wonderful. Thanks.
Other questions or comments from staff?
Are these just now for the public engagement, or is this questions about any of the subcommittees?
Let's just stick with public engagement for now, and then we'll know what we're talking about when we figure out subcommittees. Any questions or comments? Commissioner?
Just a clarification question. On our little draft, there was a possibility of a public engagement subcommittee and a community survey subcommittee. Those seem really close, so maybe you could differentiate those? Because they're all about getting
Right.
public comments.
I guess the more specific one is the survey subcommittee that would just basically look at the questions that were generated by the consultant that were going to be part of the survey.
Okay.
So the engagement plan would be much broader and talking about these intercept groups and where the best place would be and how many we should have and who's involved with that, along with the community meetings and if there's any further ideas along with that and how to develop those or little programs inside of that. So yeah, so there, I would say that both of them are specific tasks, but definitely the survey one has more specific guidelines to it. And, you know, if that was a subcommittee, that it would probably be a shorter amount of time that it would last. I think the other thing I would try to convey up here is some of the, like the stakeholder group representative would start from now and go until May of 2015. So that's a long commitment. But the engagement subcommittee would be now until December of this year. So I think that there's things to consider there too, along with breaking down subcommittees, that there's timelines to them. So.
Okay. Yeah, the intercepts are great. I saw that weaved in here. Back in the day, I participated in those for certain kinds of market research, and you know, that's known as qualitative, not quantitative, which is supposedly not to be as good, but it's great because you just get unvarnished opinions on topics and sometimes even visuals that kind of change your perceptions. Just one other quick question. At the bottom of page 4, the project team is going to present to council 3 times. Is that the consultant, or is that consultant plus city, or just what's the makeup?
Consultant plus city staff.
Okay, great. That's all. Thanks.
Commissioner Rectal?
I had a question about the community survey. It's bilingual. We have a lot of Mandarin speakers now. Was that arbitrary, or is there city policy just to have bilingual surveys, or how was that chosen?
That is a good question. I would say that we could look at having other languages represented with the survey as well. I don't know if the bilingual actually just specifies that it is Spanish that needs to be in, so that's something that we can definitely look at more. I think there is some demographic information that does talk about a language in Palo Alto, so it would just be looking to see if that was a large enough group, I guess, to go and develop that material specifically.
Yeah, and
so
it's not trivial to get Mandarin. I think
right.
We're used to translating into Spanish, but the learning curve getting into Mandarin is not as much. But I know when I'm at the park, my neighborhood park, there's a lot of elderly Chinese, and small talking with them, they speak Mandarin much better than English.
Right.
So I would think Mandarin would be useful.
That is interesting that you actually bring that up. That was brought up as one of the intercept activities. One of the parks was specifically recognized as being a hub of an Asian community. I can't now recall what that was now. I can't remember if it was Mandarin or not. But the consultant did say that they did have access to, if the intercept group was going to be in that park, that they would basically bring someone along that was able to speak in the language there. So if that is an intercept group that we do decide to have, the consultant has a means of providing that service to us. So,
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Crummy?
I don't have a lot of a voice tonight. I have laryngitis, but are we going to get to do any phone surveying or not? Because I heard sometimes the quality of that is better as far as you can't stack it.
We don't have anything planned for doing a phone survey at this point. That's something that we can discuss with the consultant about. They have not really brought it up as something that I guess is viable to them. I think if it was important and they've used that process before and it was successful, that they would have brought it up, but we can discuss that with them. I think that phone surveys have a more specific questioning that happens about, like, do you either like this or not? And I think that the survey that we're going to do is going to be broader than that. And I don't know if it can set up for that, but that is something that we can converse with them more on.
Have they commented on bias in online surveys?
That is something that they do account for into their surveys. So I can't quantitatively tell you how they do that, but they do have a mention that they do look at the bias for their online survey, definitely.
I had a couple questions and comments, and the target audiences for city residents, including current and potential park users. We want have recreation users as well, don't we? Or do we have an intercept process for rec users, we're not just going to be out in the park?
Yes, the recreation would be part of it. So, and the consultant did bring up that it's not just intercept groups at parks, but farmers market, at events at Lucy Stern, or, you know, concerts in the park. So that there should be a variety of basically community events hit to get the broadest kind of user group that's happening. So
Great. And I think one of the things we really want to understand more about is sort of the geographic distribution of our facilities and our users. So I think it would definitely be important to tap into the neighborhood coordinator network for each of the distinct neighborhoods. And I don't know if they would be on the stakeholder group, or I don't know how to best do that, but we would want to be able to use them to send out the survey to their community. They might want to bring the community together, have a discussion about it. Who knows, but we should keep them on the list. On page 2, thinking more about surveys, presumably for a survey, we want to get it out to the widest reach possible. So will we be using our partners and the various stakeholders to distribute that survey? I think you said we would.
the stakeholders are important as kind of spokesmen for their group to disseminate information back to them. So they should be providing them with emails that basically say that the survey is available to take or do. Our plan is to send out actually the survey as a written form in the utility bill that goes to all residents in Palo Alto. So everyone will have the opportunity to do it. It will also have the direction that you can go online and do it there as well if you so choose. And then you can mail it back basically. So.
Commissioner Cromie.
Do you know how many residents just do automatic payment on utilities? I know I do, so I don't open it up. I don't any longer open up utility bills, and I think it'd be really good to get a number on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we would want to know how successful we would be in actually reaching people through that method. That makes me nervous as well.
Can we just take a poll on the commission? How many people open up their utility bills? Well, that's pretty good. So 3, 4. Okay.
We pay online, but sometimes we look and cry over the water bill.
Exactly.
So, Chair Hadley, to your point, I think about leveraging our partner organizations and neighborhood associations and the schools to help get the survey out, that's absolutely going to be a strategy. Yeah.
Next question is, I was talking to Rob about this earlier on the mapping tool. I wanted to understand how we can manipulate that, not for sinister purposes, but can we, for example, ask the map to show us the geographic distribution of tennis courts, or the user group distribution of this facility has majority, this age group, this facility has a majority, this age group. Is that the kind of thing that the mapping tool will be able to do for us after they've completed the inventory and the surveying?
We did not specifically ask that question today when we were talking to them, but I do imagine that yes, that it has the capability of quickly deciphering the information that's been put into it into different categories, basically to extract different types of information. I think that's why they're interested in it, because it's helping them catalog very quickly people's responses to, you know, sidewalks or how they feel about parks, and it allows them to then group all those things and figure out how many people were talking about the same thing, or interested in the same thing, or like this specific thing, or didn't like this thing. So I'm sure that it has that capability. I will ask them more about that, but I'm going to say that it does.
Okay. Do you think that will they also be collecting information about users for specific facilities? What the user profile looks like for Lucy Stern versus Mitchell Park versus whatever. I think that would be useful to have in terms of age groups in particular. Also, times of maximum and minimum usage. It'd be great to glean from this that this site is used very heavily during these periods, but there are big gaps here and here and here that might influence pricing for rentals. It might influence how we program that site differently to increase usage during the downtimes. I think that would be very useful also. So I don't know where that would fit in here or if that's been in part of the scope already. Then on page 3, the community master plan review meeting, it says that there will be one community-wide workshop to solicit feedback from the general public on the draft master plan and individual park master plans. It seems to me that maybe we might want at least 2 of those. We have 3 meetings for the general public to asking them to help us say what they want. But if we only have 1 where you miss it, you're done, to see the draft of where we've taken that information, I think it would be much more appropriate to have at least 2 to report back to the community before it goes to decision making.
We have discussed this a little bit as well, and I do agree with you. If we feel that another meeting is necessary at the time, then we should definitely will have it and make that part of the process. I think we do also want to get the report out there to people as well so they can see it before the meeting. So we talked about putting it in libraries and then advertising that so people could go see the plans and the written material so they have an opportunity to look at it, also posting it online so people have the opportunity to look at it there, and providing the opportunity for them to comment on it as well. So yes, I do agree. It needs to be not just a meeting, but it needs to be out there more. And if it needs to have more meetings, even more than 2, maybe 3, then
we have the flexibility to do that.
Yes.
Great. Then on page 4, top of page 4, you're listing the stakeholder groups who are going to be consulted. This is not the community stakeholder groups. This is the boards and commissions mostly, it looks like. I see the stakeholder advisory committee. I think it'd be great to be able to plug in the teen council and the other teen groups, and maybe I don't know if they need their own meeting or we invite them to one of the other meetings, but I think it would be great to formally solicit their input. And that's it for my questions and comments, which I guess brings us,
Just talking about teens, I think that's a very good idea. There's a lot of teen use of the parks. Through the schools would be a prime opportunity to get them involved and get some feedback, what they want in the parks and also in recreation too.
that reminds me, that was another group that I thought, another partner that might be worth leveraging is the PTAs in particular, in terms of getting people to actually fill out the survey and turn it back in. They're good at that. Any other comments before we move on to the ad hoc question? Questions about the schedule? Nothing? Okay, well, since I still have, oh, yes.
The master plan report subcommittee, could you touch on that a bit, on what that's going to entail?
The subcommittee for that? Or?
For the master plan, yeah, the subcommittee.
That would be basically talking about the outline and how that report is set up and drafted, and structured. Would be engagement with the consultant about that, and then reviewing the draft before the actual rest of the commission did to provide comment, and then also to report back to the commission of how that draft was proceeding. And so that would be kind of the scope of being on that committee.
Quick addition to that timeline on there should be December 2014 to August 2015, instead of from 2015 to 2015.
Oh, you are correct. You'd actually have to go back in time to do that too, so that would be hard.
So I have another question about the ad hocs then. You have these 4 suggestions for separate groups that we might set up, but also on page 4 of this public engagement thing, the second full paragraph suggests that the ad hoc committee would be used to shape the community survey, to weigh in on priority projects, expansion opportunities, prioritization exercise, feedback on phasing, revenue and funding options, cost models. We haven't talked about that tonight at all.
Those also could be opportunities to have. So, again, I was just, allowing the commission to have a few options of what the ad hoc or subcommittees could be, but there is a broad range of information that is discussed in this. For that, if you didn't have a specific one that talked about budget, then that scope would be part of the draft of the report itself. So if the ad hoc committee was just for the report, then it would cover those aspects as well.
But the full scope of the kinds of input you would like from the commission is what's listed in this paragraph here.
Yes.
Okay. But you're not suggesting that we necessarily have an ad hoc for each of those?
Some of those things can also just come from our general full meetings as well.
Okay.
So,
I was going to say, I think that most of the commission is going to be interested in weighing in on most of those issues.
Right.
So maybe that's the kind of stuff that we want to do with the full commission. I'd like to open it up to discussion about what everybody thinks in terms of ad hocs, whether we should, I'd like to gauge people's interest in participating in one of these or some reconfiguration of these. Last time we talked about it, everybody wanted to be on the ad hoc. That was a long time ago. I don't know if that's still true. So I'd love to hear what you all think. Maybe we only need a community outreach ad hoc, or maybe we need 2.
Chair Hedderly, can I ask a question of clarification before you proceed on that? Mm-hmm. Is there going to be a master plan ad hoc committee in addition to those 4 subcommittees that are listed here?
That's what we're discussing right now.
Okay.
I was just going to add that there may be multiple ad hoc committees, and they don't all need to be decided today or this evening. I think having an ad hoc committee, either 1 or 2, focused on public engagement, and then maybe also survey, or combining the 2, I could see that making sense, that we had one ad hoc committee working on that as a start. This is a 1.5-year process, and as we get feedback, I think other things will emerge where we'll say, oh, we ought to look at that a little more, a little closer, and decide that we should establish an ad hoc committee specifically for something that has, come out of the survey results. So I don't think we need to decide this evening about all the ad hoc committees that we might want to create during this process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
My feeling is that we shouldn't have one committee that we call the master plan ad hoc because it just seems too significant. And so we should just name ad hocs on a topic rather than say this is the main one and all these other ones kind of are subordinate.
Yeah, one of the problems is I don't have a clear idea of all the tasks we're doing. And I don't think we do right now. I think, like you said, you look at the survey results and that may bring up more tasks. I'm not sure if we want to get an ad hoc together to look at this more and then propose the other ad hocs, or we talk about it at the retreat. I think this is something that will take some time to chew on.
It seems to me that all we know about at this point is the public engagement plan. And we know that there's going to be a stakeholder group, and we know that there's going to be a survey as part of this plan. And those things are going to happen in, what's the timeline? It says current, but they're still doing the inventory now. When do you?
The community meetings will start in 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll start pretty soon.
Okay, so 4 to 6 weeks. Our retreat is March 7th, but we don't get the presentation from the consultant until the 10th. So we won't have any new information before the retreat. So maybe it makes sense to...
Is there a draft that we can get?
I think you should have the...
Is there a draft of the staff report?
From the consultant?
It's being prepared, so it's not ready to be made public yet. No, there isn't one available.
And would it be available before March 7th?
Yes, it'll be in the packet for council on Thursday, right, March 6th. So you wouldn't get it much earlier than that.
Right.
And we're just in the process of writing it now and going through the review process. And I don't know that there's a lot more information in there, more context as to the why, we're doing the master plan for council orientation. There's a presentation PowerPoint from MIG that they're going to be putting forward, but a lot of the focus is going to be on the public engagement plan, really.
And that is the first phase of this project, is the public engagement plan. So that's why then I start to break out basically like this top 3 things there as being that aspect. And then the third one is being the master plan report subcommittee. So again, I think when it comes time to forming the subcommittees of that, we'll talk about the master plan report and how it's broken down. And then there may be segments of the sections of that report that people are interested in making a subcommittee of those as well. So,
Well, I think Chair Headley summarized it well, is that we know that the first 2 items, well, really the first 3 items are going to happen, and that we need to participate in that. So what if we committed that within 4 weeks we would have ad hoc committees to cover those first 3 items, and then we could maybe formulate them at the retreat after we've thought about it a bit? And maybe even 2. I mean, to begin with, let's put community survey and public engagement as one, and then have that committee decide if it should split off. So we would just commit to have 2 of those by the end of our retreat or some time frame like that. I mean, as opposed to doing it tonight, but if people want to do it tonight, that's okay too. But that's not going to change, that's all I'm saying. That is fixed, and we need to participate in both of those, so.
I guess my preference is to do it tonight if nobody expects any more information or wants to think any more about it. I'm not sure what different conversation we would have on March 7th than we would now. We've got it on the agenda and we're all here. So I do have another question about the stakeholder group representative. It seems to me that's probably the most time consuming, because well, maybe not. It'll be multiple meetings. And the question is whether somebody who's working on public engagement and community survey, they're going to need to be able to reflect on what was shared at the stakeholder group in order to participate. So it almost seems to me like it makes more sense to have one ad hoc covering all 3 of those first things, though that would be a huge time commitment. I don't know that anyone is able to do that. Any thoughts? No?
I think that's too much to combine.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was no second for that motion.
No.
Well, I think I agree with the need for integration. And so we're going to have to come up with a way to do that.
another option would be just to have a ad hoc committee for the public engagement part that would include these 3 things. If it was composed of 3 members, basically, then each one of the members would go to a stakeholder meeting through the process. So there's another opportunity as well.
That's true. So you could have 2 subcommittee, 2 ad hocs, one for public engagement, one for the survey, that have representatives who go to the stakeholder group. Or do you want, right?
Yes.
So intertwines.
Do we envision the ad hoc is going to be just basically reporting what's happening and come back and we'll discuss it in the full commission? Or will it be more autonomous in making small decisions along the way?
What is your sense about, will there be enough time to go back and forth like that, or are we really looking for representatives to speak on the spot?
I think it's representatives, just to move it along, because the commission doesn't meet that often. So the consultant will be looking for feedback that they can sort of act on. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments? Any interest in participating?
It's also, we intentionally have this coming to the commission, 5 times for the whole commission to discuss. So the idea is most of the real substantive discussion happens with the full commission. That's the intent, yeah.
Okay, I'm not seeing much enthusiasm on the panel this evening, so maybe we should table it for the retreat when we talk about other ad hocs and other work of the commission, so that we can balance it out. People can figure out what kind of workload they want to take on and where their priorities are. Does that work?
Yeah, I'm interested. There's probably interest here.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I bet there is a lot of interest. I suspect.
Yeah, I think there is interest, but to me, when I'm looking at this community service and public engagement, the community survey rather, and public engagement, how we delineate what is responsible for what, and even the stakeholder, what topics, when we're talking to the stakeholders, are they just going to be spewing their opinions, or are we trying to form a consensus within these stakeholder meetings? I don't really know how this whole process is going to work.
It will operate in both ways to allow them to spew, as you may, and then also to build consensus about a prioritization over the planning of the master plan. So
the stakeholder group will be issuing an opinion, a recommendation for the commission.
Their opinions will be, yes, considered as part of building the prioritization list.
But will they be voting on a recommendation, or will they just be saying certain members of the stakeholder group had this concern, other ones had this concern, and then dumping those concerns on us, and then we have to digest them and figure out what our recommendation council will be?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. My sense is that they'll be trying to do both, as Peter said. They'll try and gather as much input as possible from all of these diverse stakeholders, and then try and draw out the themes from that group of stakeholders, and focus in on those areas of highest interest or need. I suspect that's what it'll be.
Mm-hmm. But part of it is when you get these individual groups, they all have their favorite topic, right? So the dog park people, first in line is going to be dog parks, and other groups that have, the teen groups, well, they want stuff for the teens. And will you be able to reach consensus when you have a bunch of fragmented groups that all have their personal opinions?
Yeah, that's a good point, and we've talked about this, and we want to find individuals and representatives for the stakeholders group that have a broad perspective, that are not there for one issue. And while that is important,
mm-hmm.
that one issue to that individual, for this kind of work, for a master plan, which you need to think about the entire community and multiple interests. That's what we're looking for. So yeah, we will have people that are focused on athletic fields, but they need to have a broader perspective than just fields to be on the stakeholders committee. You know what I mean? So we're really looking for broad participation, broad perspective for the members.
For me, there's 2 different types of input we want, like Ed was talking about. You want to make sure that anyone in the community who has an axe to grind gets their say.
Yeah.
And if they get overrepresented, if they organize their little group and come out and organize, they can say their piece. but we're just trying to gather opinion. We're not trying to quantify and say, oh, this percentage of people at the meeting had this opinion, therefore this percentage over the whole city has that same opinion. We're not trying to extrapolate that. We're just saying these people have these concerns, but we're not saying there's any numerical representation of the city at all.
Yeah.
And the second thing is what the consultant will do is try to do numerical surveys where they give us more quantitative results. And I think those are two separate issues. I think we should try to do both. I think we want, I mean, part of this is for us to gather information, but a part of it is also give people an outlet that they know they're being heard.
We definitely want to do both. And so I hear what you're saying, and we can pose this question back to the consultant to flesh out their thinking around the stakeholder committee. There's 3 meetings, I think, planned. What does that look like? Commission wants, trying to figure out how to represent on that. You need to know more about what is expected of that committee. So and we can certainly get that by the 7th and have answers for you.
And I can briefly elaborate on that. I believe that the first meeting is the opportunity for the groups to kind of state what they want and what they'd like to see as far as the Parks and Recreation in Palo Alto goes. The second meeting is to discuss all those things and then have them talk about what the prioritization is. And I think that the key aspect of the stakeholder group is it allows those groups to see that there are other groups that have interest in this as well. And they get to understand what those interests are. And from that dialogue, then start to really talk about then what are the prioritizations. So when it comes to dog parks, how does that fit in with the tennis users or the athletic field users, and how have them have the opportunity to have that dialogue between themselves. The key aspect of the stakeholders themselves are that they're representing a larger group. So they bring the interests of that group, and they should be also disseminating back to that group what is taking place in these meetings and what is being discussed. So that basically is the second meeting. The third meeting basically then is more of a review that then here's what we heard from you. This is the master plan draft. We'll review that and then take further comment from it. So that's kind of the process and steps that they'll be involved with the process itself.
But do you anticipate that the stakeholder group will give you the priorities, or will they just give the feedback to staff and the staff will digest that and come with the priorities?
They will be an element that will inform how those priorities, but yes, so they'll be providing feedback. They won't be setting what the priorities are.
The stakeholder group will, or the staff?
Stakeholders will, they'll be involved with the process of recommending, but the staff and the consultant then will take that information and with all the other information and construct a prioritization list, basically.
Okay, I agree. That's the better way of doing it, because I think you will get fragmentation within that stakeholder group.
Definitely.
And the staff has the ability to digest that and come up with something that where everyone is treated equally.
Are we done with this topic? All right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So is there any other questions that you'd like us to pose back to the consultant before the retreat? So that's important, that would just would help inform selecting ad hoc committees. So I got one, which is the stakeholder group and the role of the stakeholder group. Is there anything else you'd like us to ask between now and the 7th?
I'd like to know their opinion on phone surveying versus online.
I've got that one, yep.
See, phone surveys, I never pick up my phone now unless I look at caller ID and someone I know. So if some survey person's trying to get a hold of me, they're never going to get a hold of me by the phone. So I also, even though online surveys, if you go to SurveyMonkey, that can be stacked, but also phone surveys I don't think necessarily are even too. I think it's very difficult to get a broad cross-section and not stack somehow. Okay. But the consultants should be able to address that. Yeah.
Oh, I have another question. And that is there any anticipation of looking at school facilities?
I don't believe so. I don't think that's in the scope.
We are going to have a meeting with the school district to discuss the playfield use and any opportunity for expansive of use. We haven't had that meeting yet, so I can't really elaborate on that, but that is the idea, is to definitely bring them into the conversation. Actually, within the next few weeks, we need to set up that meeting.
I think it would be extremely useful to be able to coordinate some kind of tie-in with them regarding inventory of services or who their users are.
Right. Well, currently the athletic fields at the grammar school and middle schools are utilized by the city and maintained by the city. So we have and are using those facilities for our recreational programs now.
Right, but we don't have any involvement in the high school fields or pools, nor do we have any involvement in the classroom space.
Right.
So it would be interesting to know if the school district is already providing tutoring for this group to a great extent at Palo, then maybe we don't want to do the same kind of tutoring in the same part of town. It would be very helpful to know what they're offering where in order to prioritize what we want to offer where. So I think we can't do that without understanding what it is they're doing. I'm not saying we should force them to cooperate. I know there's, there's turf issues about who controls rents and and tenants, but it would be really useful to know at least what type of service or what type of user is geographically using a school
Are you talking
site.
about the rec programs or the summer school, or I'm not?
I'm talking about after school, weekends, summer programs. They surely have some long-term.
Anything that would compete with.
You've lost your mic.
You've been cut off.
With recreation. We have 3 hours.
Okay, good, because summer school for the high school level does not have recreation. That's just remedial and living skills, and that switches campus to campus. Last year it was at Palo, this summer it will be at Gunn, for example. But for sports, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was thinking more of services that are generally available to the public, like classes, tutoring, whatever else, summer camps,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, now we're on to item number 4, capital improvement plan for Hopkins Park. And I have no public comment on this, but I believe Darren is going to present.
Do you have the mouse?
I'm going to have Catherine drive for me for right now.
Pardon? Good evening. I'm Darren Anderson, Division Manager for Open Space, Parks, and Golf. And we're here tonight to ask your feedback on the proposed design associated with the Hopkins Park Capital Improvement Project. Hopkins Park is a 12.4-acre park that's largely undeveloped. The park has 3 separate developed areas located along San Francisco Creek. It's on Palo Alto Avenue at Webster, Cowper, and Middlefield. And I'll be referring to those 3 kind of developed meadows as sites, site 1, 2, and 3. As we get them, I'll walk you through a photo, 2 photos of each site as it exists now, and then the design for that site that's been drawn up by our landscape architect, Eddie Chow, the contract landscape architect. The funding from the CIP is limited to $95,000, and it's really intended just to replace the existing site amenities in the irrigation system. We had a public meeting on August 26, 2013, where we shared some draft plans with community members who attended the meeting and received a number of comments and suggestions ranging from recommended trail size and material to the configuration of the trail itself and the associated turf, plant species, and an idea on adding interpretive signage to the park. We've incorporated these suggestions into a revised design that's before you tonight. And if we could open the Hopkins photo. Excellent, thank you, Catherine. Here we've got the existing Hopkins Site 1, and that's at Palo Alto Ave and Cowper Street. And in the photograph, you can see there's the turf area, a bench, a picnic area, and a sign. Not a lot of amenities to this area. It's just a little kind of pull out. And the game plan would be we would trench out that turf to put in a new irrigation system and add some other design features. Can you change to the next photo? This is the same shot, same park segment, site 1, just from the other angle. You can see what it looks like. And if you can go to the design and the third. And can you go to the third of those 3? Perfect, thank you. And this design is also in your packet, so you've seen it, but it includes a 6-foot decomposed granite pathway. Again, this is one that the community members weighed in on, both in terms of the size of that trail, the material, and to some degree, the shape of it. You can see there's a non-linear fashion to the trail closest to the street side, where it kind of weaves in and out. That was a request from the public to give it a slightly more natural feel. And it was a compromise between accounting for that and at the same time making sure you had the opportunity to maximize the turf area. It's limited as is, but some community members did say that they see it getting used for play, or some of them used them themselves and wanted to retain as much as possible in this particular instance. And so it was kind of a compromise and appeasing. Same thing with the corners of the trail. They wanted them round them. The original design came to a sharp edge, and they said, can we soften that? It's just another element that we incorporated those comments into the design that you see for you tonight. We had 2 new park benches and 2 picnic tables, both on concrete pads. The previous existing benches have no pad, so they're often sitting on wet mud, and this is an improvement that adds more accessibility to those features. We also add a vegetated area on the street side part of this park, which is, again, both the vegetated area and the species that we used were all feedback from those community members. And I can go through the species if you'd like, but the primary element was, can you make sure they're drought resistant? Can you, by and large, make sure they're California natives and kind of reflect the proximity to the creek? San Francisco Creek is right along both of these. And I should also mention that at the beginning of this meeting, we had, per our direction from the commission, threw out the concept of, is anyone interested here in a dog park in this site? And fortunately, we were already informed by the El Camino Park dog issue that it wouldn't fit in this one because of the setback off the creek. It's 100 feet, which would put you onto the street, basically, in this park. So it wasn't really an option, but we posed it both at this one and the next discussion out of Monroe Park. It was just both posed so that we kind of follow through on the direction of the commission, that we hear from people, and make sure they're heard and they know this is an element we'll be looking at every time we do these reach outs and community outreach for a project. And it just so happened no one was interested in the dog run at this site anyways. Looking at Hopkins Site 2, this is at Palo Alto Ave and Webster. And if we can go to the Site 2. Much like the previous one, the photo you're about to see in a second, we'll show you a turf area, a bench, and a sign. Again, very, very simple. You'll also note in this particular site, there's a utility pole, which greatly affects what you can do with that area. It's small already, but that kind of puts some limitations on it. All the existing trees will remain in all the sites except for the palm tree in this one. Can you change to the next photo? You can see the palm a little more clearly in this one. This was one of the items we discussed in the meeting. The majority of the meeting participants felt that the palm tree, which was a volunteer that is not planted, but just kind of self-seeded and grew, didn't belong at the park. It wasn't in keeping with the riparian nature of the park, being so close to the adjacent San Francisco Creek. And this one, now if we can switch to the design for this site, and the third one, please. Perfect. We relocate the sign of this park a little closer to the front. It's a little more visible. Again, you've got that 6-foot wide decomposed granite pathway, new picnic table, new park bench, and an added interpretive sign. Some of the added vegetation to this is a Quercus agrifolia, which is the coast live oak, again, kind of responding to those meeting participants who wanted to have those native trees. Also kind of addresses that drought tolerant concern that we've got, and a myriad of other native vegetation. And if we could go to Site 3, this is located on Palo Alto Ave in Middlefield. And then this existing photo that Catherine will open up momentarily, again, it's got a park sign. In this particular site, there is an existing path. I think at one time it was decomposed granite, and over many, many years it's come to just kind of resemble a dirt path. So that pathway would stay, the pathway would be rebuilt basically with decomposed granite with header board and the proper width. In that existing photo, you'll also see ivy and a few shrubs and a few trees. The old shrubs and the ivy in this site are removed with this new design. The ivy is often associated with vermin problems, and so when possible, this was, again, a request from the community. It's not always a problem in this particular site. They said it was, and they'd like to see it removed and replaced with mulch, which we've added to this design. And new plantings are placed around the sign. There's two small trees that are in poor health. They're very, very small. I think they may already be dead, but those will be removed as part of the project as well. And that concludes my presentation, and we welcome your questions and comments.
I'd just like to ask, Darren, how many people were at the meeting? The outreach meeting?
I believe it was 8 participants.
I have a question. We have a public comment. Why don't we go ahead and take that before we have our questions and comments? This is Howard Hoffman, and he's addressing this agenda item. Are you going to speak 3 times? I'm confused by how you fill this out.
Well, actually,
you want to speak to each item?
No, just this one right now, but probably the next part too. This item and the next one.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'll speak right now just to this one.
Okay.
Okay. So, Howard Hoffman, president of Palo Alto Dog Owners, and I understand that at some point or other, somebody made a decision that it was environmentally not a good thing to have a dog park next to San Francisco Creek. The Hoover Park dog park is right next to a creek. There's no impact on the creek from the dogs. I don't really understand how this concept of the 100-foot setback was arrived at, but I think that if you look at the way dog waste is handled, it doesn't end up in the creek. And I know that this was at the El Camino Park, reason that dog park was not included ultimately. And so once again, we have another park revision with no provision for a dog park, is the bottom line in this situation right now. And we have 3 very limited facilities right now. I would like to see the staff really figure out what they can do in every one of these park plans to do what they can to find some way of working more dog parks. Particularly, this is North Palo Alto. There are no dog parks in all of North Palo Alto. And as far as these meetings are concerned, I just wondered how they're noticed. Since I came and announced our organization to the commission, I've not been notified of any of these meetings. And I would like to make sure that personally and my organization always gets notified of every single meeting related to every proposed park update. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? No. Any reactions to the Hopkins Park improvements?
So it looks like there's going to be a provision to retain grass because it's small areas, and I think that's good because I think visually it's really nice.
I have a question. It does, the staff report says there was $95,000 approved for repairing existing features, but I was just out there today because I didn't know much about this park myself, and it looks like a fabulous plan. I think it's going to be a tremendous improvement to what they have, but it does add DG pathways where they weren't before, and it adds quite a bit of plantings that aren't there now. Is that going to impact the budget, or are you going to be able to squeeze it in there?
I believe we'll be real close. We don't have the finalized budget for this yet. We'll learn more when we have the construction drawings done. So we'll go through typically we have those done concurrent with the PIO process. So we'll have, usually Peter or our contractor help put together those cost estimates. But I know we're right around that $95,000 figure. And like other park projects, every once in a while when we're really, really close, we can augment with, for example, the benches I could fund with another CIP, assuming there's funding available for that. And since we're really talking about a few small ticket items, there's only, I think it's, 4 benches, something like that. I could probably accommodate it in another CIP if this one turns out short just by a little bit. But I know we're in the ballpark.
My other question is, there was, I think it's on Site 1, but I'm not sure. I can't recall now which one was which. One of the funny-shaped grassy sections had a bench on the right-hand side that had a little plaque on it in memory of someone. I thought it was this bench, I thought it was located where this concrete pad is on Site 1 that you're going to remove. I just wanted to make sure that you'd followed whatever protocol was appropriate for protecting that bench or moving the bench. I don't know what's going to happen to the bench.
For this particular memorial bench, the plaque will be put onto a new bench.
In the same location?
I don't know if that bench is in the exact same place. That's not, there is no guarantee that if you have a memorial bench, that it will be there for perpetuity. Usually it's the lifespan of the bench. In this particular case, the bench has not reached its end of its life completely. It's rather we're going to improve it by putting the concrete pad under it, and we have a better location. I mean, it's been there so long, the vegetation has changed. There's just better ways of putting it, especially when you're adding a trail. So for that reason, we'll be putting that plaque onto this new bench. And I think it is slightly relocated.
But still in Hopkins Park?
That's right, still in the same park.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Cromie?
Do they have the same kind of benches as Monroe Park? Like those big green ones?
The existing?
In Hopkins?
No.
They look like they are from the pictures.
Yeah, I don't think that they're quite the same as the one in Monroe.
Are they getting as many feet of bench replaced?
It's more, yeah.
More, okay. Good.
Commissioner Markovich?
So if you're looking at this picture, you have Palo Alto Avenue, and then on the other side of this little green crescent is the creek. Now, there's no fence between the edge of the park and going down into the creek, is there?
No, there isn't.
There is there?
Yeah. There is a fence.
Oh, that little green piece? Okay. Yeah. It's a cute little park. It's interesting, though, because the majority of what usage I see is off-leash dogs. So, I can't speak to the legality of that, but I see people using that more for that than anything else.
And the same was true for the section of El Camino Park, the northern undeveloped section where we thought it would be really appropriate to have a dog run, and we tried and were denied by the regulatory agencies and the setback requirement from the city.
I do have one comment about El Camino Park. They've put up, I'm not sure if the city did this, or I suspect the train put it up, a big fence that cut that area in half. So apparently that area that we're looking at as potential dog park, some of that was right away for the railroad. And that now has been cut in half by that fence. So if we had tried to pursue that, I suspect we would have had a much smaller dog park than we had thought we could get.
Any other questions or comments? So this is a discussion item. It sounds like there are no concerns about the design. So
Yes, staff is really seeking your input. We appreciate it, and we intend on bringing it back next month with the park improvement ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is another park improvement proposal for Monroe Park. And we do have a public comment for that, but we'll hear your staff report first.
Good evening, Darren Anderson, Open Space Parks and Golf. Peter Jensen, the city's landscape architect, and myself will co-present the Monroe Park capital improvement project. Again, we're here for your review and your feedback on this Monroe Park capital improvement project. The park was developed in 1975 and it's located on Miller Drive and Monroe Drive. It's a small park, 0.55 acres, and the existing park amenities are a park destination sign, an asphalt park trail, a mounded turf area, a playground, and park benches. And we've got a CIP for $250,000 to provide the necessary upgrades to the pathway, benches, trash, recycling, and play equipment at Monroe. And the funding focuses on repairing those existing infrastructure and doesn't entail a full-scale park renovation. We had a public meeting to discuss this project on August 26, 2013. This is the same date of the Hopkins public meeting. Draft plans were shared with the meeting participants. And the participants had several concerns and comments regarding this initial draft plan, suggestions regarding the mounded turf area, the landscaping, the appropriate play structure, that we include sand, and the type of benches to make sure that we were placing in kind the length and the total seating area was really critical. Our contract landscape architect, Eddie Chow, had briefly discussed the issue of adding a dog off-leash area to the park, and the meeting participants agreed that Monroe Park was too small to include dog off-leash area at the site. Peter Jensen hosted a second public meeting on October 19th at the park, and an updated proposed renovation plan was presented incorporating the input we had received from that previous meeting. And these revised plans addressed many of the concerns: maintaining that turf on the corner of Miller Ave and Monroe Drive, maintaining the sand in the playground area, installing a larger swing set with an accessible swing and a rubberized play surface, additional park benches with added light along Miller Avenue. Another proposed renovations to the park were introduced at the first community meeting include reducing that turf area along Miller Ave for sustainability purposes, installing a new walkway to replace the damaged asphalt walk, adding drought-tolerant plantings, planting new trees, large-scale valley oaks and small cercis trees. And this was well received amongst the majority of the community in attendance. A question concerning having a play structure at this playground instead of swings was brought up, but was voted against by the attendees in favor of the swing. A playhouse has been added to the design to increase the play opportunities in the playground that addresses the concern of just having a swing in favor of a play structure. And you've probably seen, I believe it was 3 emails that came in subsequent to this public meeting from other adjacent homeowners who have said, hey, we really would appreciate having a play structure. And again, it's unfortunate they weren't present at the public meetings, either of the two, to have a voice to say that was a critical element, but it was discussed at the second of these 2 public meetings. And again, the consensus was that the swing and the sand in this playhouse were what was preferred. And again, the resource impact, there's $250,000 allocated for this project, and we're here and available for questions and comments.
Thank you. We do have one public comment, Howard Hoffman.
Thank you again, Howard Hoffman, Palo Alto dog owners. A couple of months ago, I took Peter Jensen of your staff over to Mountain View to see the new Mountain View dog park that is behind the new Safeway and at the corner of San Antonio, well, roughly it's San Antonio and El Camino. And in a very small space, and I think this was done with private developer money and then turned over to the city, but in an incredibly small space with artificial turf, the city of Mountain View has a dog park that puts the dog parks of Palo Alto combined to shame. On a rainy day, there's not a place you want to take your dog in Palo Alto. On a rainy day in Mountain View, your dog can play on nice artificial turf, not get muddy. There's beautiful art there. I don't think it's a quarter of an acre. It's a very small area, very nicely done. It shows when people really want to be creative and use technology available, what they can do. And I would like to see Palo Alto, whether it's specifically at Monroe Park, maybe it's late for getting a change in here. Again, I don't quite get the community notice aspect of this whole process yet. And maybe Monroe Park is not the ideal place. But there are opportunities within this park system, and I don't want to wait until the end of the master plan to see people talking about then the capital improvement, and then 3 years later we'll get a dog park. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Cromie.
Well, I need to disclose I live across the street from this park. And I also go to the dog park in Mountain View that the speaker just commented on, which is a 10-minute walk from this park, because this park is on the border of Palo Alto and Mountain View. Monroe Park is full of dog owners, yet I can't imagine a single one of them wanting our grass park to go to artificial turf. So I don't think that would be the right plan for a neighborhood park that doesn't really have open areas at all.
That's a very small park.
It's a very small park, but I talked a lot with neighbors about this plan. People are really happy with it. We had a lot of good attendance at the meetings, especially I think the second one. And I have some technical comments that people are saying, should I give those now? I tried to save my voice for this, but I'm not really doing that well. Okay, so just starting at one corner where you have the trail coming in from the right-hand side, people don't think that's the best place for trash cans. The bike rack is fine. I'm just looking at the handout here. That's what I'm going by, or the picture. So those trash cans that are on the right-hand side of the map, people, I talked to about 5 people I surveyed, people I walked around the park with hardly any voice to do interception work. And luckily one of my neighbors came with me who could speak, but I listened a lot. Anyway, people didn't think that was the best place for the trash cans because we feel like people in the park won't use them, just people walking past the park. So you'll pick up a lot of trash from people in cars who might want to dump it or other places. Right now, the trash can, there's existing trash cans and they're just more central into the park. So we feel like that needs to maybe be reconsidered.
There are 2 over here too. Also.
Yeah, but there's where most people sit in this park is up here. Well, I can't reach it, but.
The laser doesn't. Okay.
Where people sit on the benches, you know, the central spot, and that's where the trash needs to be. Exactly. So there's a trash can there now, and I think it would be prudent to put one close by if possible. So to have it. Basically, you have one over there to the left-hand side and then just have one draw a line across the grass and basically where it is now. As far as the new light that's going in, people are really looking forward to that because there's a dark area on the pathway, but the light is not in the dark area. is the problem. It has to get into the dark area, the light needs to move up the pathway. At the bend of the path is the dark area. So there, I personally agree with that as well.
Near the bench?
It's, yeah, past the new proposed bench, beyond the bench.
Where the
That's the
grass
bench.
is about to start, like down in here?
The dark area is
Yeah.
here. At the curve is the darkest area. Yeah, that's the darkest area. And that's where it would create the least amount of light contamination for that house as well. Although I didn't personally talk to them.
But even more so, I mean, I think that this is a very dark park. When you go through it in the evenings, my wife won't step foot in it in the evening. She'll walk on the street because she just feels it's just too dark back there. One thing you have to take into account is that the grassy area is a big hill. And so that shields a lot of the light that would be coming from the street lights across the way. I think we should have 2 or 3 lights in here. Right now we have 2 lights, and I would move that one over, but also have another one on the upper left. I think that we're near the trash cans. If you could have another light there, I think that would be useful also. What do you think, Deirdre?
Yeah, I mean, right now there's only one, to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So you're putting in the new one in the darkest area at that curve, and then they're proposing a new one behind the proposed swing set. Do you see that one?
Oh,
there's one being
light.
proposed
Okay.
here.
And actually,
This one here.
Okay, I didn't
there
see
are
that one.
there are 2 lights that exist out there. There is one in this location, basically. The other one that's existing sits out here more in the turf area. We're proposing to basically move it back to illuminate that corner, since that's the dark corner there, to provide light. So
This whole park, the hill especially, you really get a feeling like no one can see you, and there's a safety issue there. So I would want to make sure that we get as much light along that path as we can.
yeah, and that's the other thing is, along with the light, is that the light poles and fixtures will be changed themselves. Because yes, the ones that are out there now they're not doing anything. So yes, the new fixtures will provide much more light than what is occurring out there now. Because I would agree, it's definitely very dark.
Okay, thank you.
So as far as the benches go, we have these big, long, beautiful benches. They're about 15 feet long. They're just wonderful, and I think they're all going to go. 1 or 2 are falling apart, and people have expressed a lot of interest in having nice benches, and I assume the benches on the plan, are they 8 feet wide? The ones that are being proposed?
I believe that I selected that particular bench because it got up to a 12-foot size.
Oh, okay.
Because that was one of the comments. I think we had a different style in there before, but this was the longest one that they made, so yes. I don't think it quite gets to the 15-foot length, but it's not a 6 or 8 foot. It's definitely a lot bigger. The other thing, too, it's a little bit wider on the seat, because I think that was something that people had expressed interest before, too, is that they kind of use the bench for a picnic table as well to lay stuff out on.
Exactly.
So I did try to accommodate that by specifying a larger bench in those locations. So.
I think we also have to be concerned about the bench height. Right now, the benches are very low, and I've just been hearing from people that when shorter people are sitting on these benches, they like to be able to touch their feet. We have a big Asian community that uses this park. A lot of grandparents come here with their grandkids. A lot for a small park. And you might want to just look at bench height and see if you can do any variation on that, because the benches are so low currently, and I think people have a cozier experience.
A typical height of a bench is between 18 and 20 inches. The bench themselves, though, can be set at any height. There is nothing that really dictates. Basically, the post is put down in concrete. So if that is something that the community would like to keep, we can specify in the plans to install them at 16 inches, which would probably what they are right now, I would say. A little bit lower than
and I can't speak for everyone on that, but I just wanted to alert you that people using the park are used to that.
Right.
And I don't know really what to say beyond that. Also, I wanted to make a suggestion of another bench idea. Right now, the most popular bench is the one shown to the left of the sand area on the map, and it's a 15-foot long bench, and people use it as a table. A lot of nursing mothers sit there. It's a very, very popular bench, and it's going to be moved down because it's impeding a tree right now. But I was wondering if you might want to consider putting another bench across from that one, since it is the most popular area for sitting. I know you also have the playhouse there, so you'd have to work out if it would fit. But the only new bench that's pretty much on this map is the one on the right-hand side of the map by the long, skinny pathway. And I'm not saying that's an okay place to put a bench, but it's not a popular place. So you might want to consider the popular areas for sitting. I'm almost done. I personally, this park has gone through a lot of changes. It had the most beautiful, huge trees lining the whole rim that is shown on Miller and Monroe Drive, was just full of these super mature trees, and every one of them died. Everyone's been cut down. So we've suffered a big loss of tree canopy in this neighborhood. And that's why I understand the sustainable movement, but I feel like, I don't know, I'm now speaking for myself. I feel like it's a little bit of a loss to lose all that grass, because right now you're taking out the grass down the entire strip where it's all grass now. So I just don't know, maybe other commissioners will weigh in on this just as a principle of design and how you mitigate, where we want to go, sustainability over the aesthetic visual of an open space feeling in a very small park. I just feel mixed about it. I feel like it's a loss. I think we're getting new plants and everything, but I don't think it's replacing what we had because of the removal of all the turf.
Well, let me speak to that. Because I think there are a few factors that will answer some of your questions there. The trees themselves actually died because of the grass, because of the surface water and the constant mowing and maintenance around them. That was definitely a main contributor to the perishing of those trees. The trees themselves are beech trees. They don't live a very long life. They've gotten to the point where they have declined and are being removed. I would say for sustainability reasons, I probably would have not planted more there, but the tree department started to replace them, and there are them existing there that will be incorporated into the existing planting. I am proposing to plant in this area here where a big impact of the trees, the large trees are being removed now, to plant Quercus lobata, which is a native oak tree that will actually, not in our lifetime of course, but at some time in its life, will be larger than the trees that exist there now. That's something that doesn't really help the neighborhood at the current time, but unfortunately this is kind of where we're at with the trees and replacing them. I think it's beneficial in that area along that frontage there to eliminate the grass, because it's not really used as far as activity goes, like the main larger turf area is and the slope area. It helps us to achieve some sustainable goals by reducing the amount of water and maintenance that's needed there. And I think for the existing beech trees, the new ones that have been planted, and the proposed trees that for that area, that they will live a longer, happier life if they're not growing in the turf area itself. So that's kind of the thinking behind removing the grass from that area. And there is, we can go back here too. So we're talking mostly about kind of this area that exists right in here. So you can see the pathway as it works itself to the larger portion of the park. There's this turf zone that exists along the street there that is I think a prime opportunity for some sustainable planting there besides grass itself. So
I should add to that, at the first public meeting, there were numerous comments from the participants saying, if you were going to get rid of grass, that would be the area, the handle of that park, saying, we don't use that, we don't use that section, and that would be the appropriate plot for either vegetation. I think one of the concepts also thrown around was adult exercise equipment at one point. There also happens to be a park very nearby. I think it's less than a 5-minute walk that happens to have adult exercise equipment and a playground. That's the Del Medio Park over in Mountain View, very close by. And so the majority of the participants at that first meeting, at least, did say that would be the area to do the native planting.
And I just will finish up by saying that when I was doing the surveying in the park, we asked people with young children about the house, the style of the playhouse. And people liked that it was rustic because it fits in with the park. But people were thinking two parents said that their kids really liked a door on a playhouse because those young kids like to play hide and seek a lot. And so people felt like they might want a few more amenities if it works within the budget to add a couple other features in that house for kids to have little places to hide, by shutting a door, that kind of thing.
If you're done, Deirdre, let's take a break and we have another public comment, and then we can take the rest of our comments. Peter Krutzik.
You actually pronounced it well. That was impressive. So yeah, my name is Peter Krutzik. I was actually at the last meeting that we had that was out at the park that Peter gave, and the plans are great. So we actually just bought a house that's sort of just down the street in the new place that Classic Communities built that's on El Camino and Monroe. And so I just kind of wanted to point that out. I think some of the emails have probably been coming from some of the people moving into our new development there, where this park is, a couple minutes down the street basically for us, and it's kind of the closest park. And pretty much that first meeting, we happened to live, my wife and I and our young baby, we happened to live just kind of down the street, so we only moved, very close. And so we saw that this meeting was announced, and we came out, but pretty much everybody else in our development just started moving in after that meeting pretty much happened. So there's 26 new homes there. They're all, 2,100 square feet. Of the 10 people that we know have moved in, 7 of them have kids, young kids too, and none of these people have sort of been able to voice any real feedback, I think, on this park. So that's just one thing. I don't really have any specific things that I want to say about the design or anything, but I know it's pretty far along at this point, but it's also a shame to kind of put in this big of an investment and have a large group of people moving in, all with kids pretty much, and, not have kind of some feedback, I think, on what's going in there. So that's all I wanted to throw out. That'd be great to maybe have another opportunity for some of these other people. We let a few people know, and I think those are probably the people that, have sent in some emails. I'm not sure, but anyway, I think it'd be a great chance for some of those other people to give some feedback too. And as more people move in, and the homes are still closing right now, so it's still going to be a few more months before basically all those places have been moved into. And I think that's a pretty significant number of homes relative to kind of the size of that neighborhood in general, for that local park to have 26 new places coming up basically. So that's it.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we live, I don't know, half dozen blocks from here, so we use this fairly often growing up. And we would like to see more play equipment there, climbing structure, something like that. But it is a small park, and you're trying to really squeeze a lot in there. And I think we've done a pretty good job with this plan. I think any type of other climbing apparatus probably would have now meant that you lose some of the turf area. Now, we do have Del Medio Park, this new park in Mountain View, which is probably 3 blocks away from this, a very short walk. And that is flat, no turf, all just the spongy rubber with a lot of swings, a lot of play equipment. So it's a stark contrast to this. So I kind of like the fact that this is one style of park, that's another style of park. They're very close together. And I wouldn't try and squeeze more in. I think it's a losing battle to try and squeeze more climbing equipment here. I think you've done a decent job with that. What about picnic benches? Were you at the meeting? What did people think about that?
People are not really in favor of picnic benches because of just taking up more space, and these other benches serve a really dual purpose. So we discussed if there'd be a good place to stick any benches, and the idea is it would just take away from the open space, because one thing you can't tell from this picture is there's a beautiful hill, and the kids love to ride bikes down the hill, go in wagons down the hill. It's a park that has a lot of potential for creative play, and I've lived in the neighborhood for 14 years, and what the newcomers don't realize is that we used to have a big swing set there, and all of the other 150 families that have lived there for a long time lost that. And everyone has been really sad since it was taken away, and everyone's been waiting. All the other 150 families, all of them who are represented at the meeting, have been waiting for swings to come back. And so that's the history of this park, is that's what the park had. And we have also a pocket park down Wilkie Way that has a play structure. And if you go see it, it's so small, it's not that much fun. And it's, again, a very short walk. But it's one of these examples where you put something that isn't that exciting in a small space, and that's what we don't want in this park, even though in concept it sounds good.
Oh, I still have a couple more here. Another thing is we haven't used this turf area for quite a while. Or my kids are older now, they're teenagers. But when we used it, there was quite often drainage problems. Has that been fixed?
That's going to be an aspect that we'll work on.
Okay, very good. You also talked about on the right side there, that grassy area. Unlike Deirdre, I agree with yanking the grass out of there. I don't think it's not used by anyone. It's visual, but I think you can get other things that are visual, the lower water, that wouldn't be a loss, and also if it helps the trees, that'd be good. The one thing, that concrete walk goes right next to the redwood trees. Are you replacing that at all, or is that remaining as is?
The walkway will be replaced, and we are proposing to move it away from the redwood trees a few feet, not very far, but we would like to supply, and definitely in that area, I'm still showing on the plan kind of the bend that it has, but I think that we can look at maybe pulling it even further away from the redwood trees themselves, and
I think that'd be
giving
a really
them a little
good
bit
idea.
more area to grow.
Especially if you're not going to have turf there.
Right.
If you're just going to have more trees there, then you really want to split the difference and have that path go down the middle.
Right.
And because it's right on top of some of those redwood trees, and redwood trees don't like that.
No, they don't. Yes, and that is definitely one of the key aspects of actually the park itself, is the redwood grove that exists there along the edge. So want to protect that as much as possible.
And now the concrete walkway going around the hill there, or on the left side, is that being moved at all, or is that basically the same?
That again slides out a little bit away from the redwood trees.
Okay.
Yes, so the grass is being diminished there by 2-3 feet.
Okay.
But I think it's a fair trade-off too. There's a lot of damage that's occurring to the pathway because of the redwood trees now, so we'd like to move them away and limit that from happening in the future. So.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, just first of all, go Sand. You're listening. That's great. We've been on that bandwagon for a few years now, and it's working. It's getting worked in there. Kids love it. Parents love it while they're in the park. When they go home and it's in the bathtub, not so much, but it's a good thing for kids. Secondly, you said when you had the outreach meetings, there was discussion, and at that point, the structure was rejected in favor of, am I saying this correctly, in favor of a playhouse, or was that something that you guys inserted as an alternative? And I'm just wondering why. Was it because of size, or the constituents felt they wouldn't really be using it, or just a little bit more detail on that?
Currently, and if we were to install other play equipment there, the playground is a tot lot playground now. Which means that it's basically constructed to 2 to 5 year olds. Okay. We have, and with the I think support of the neighborhood, wanted to bring back the bigger swings basically. So it will still supply a bucket seat for a tot, as well as a accessible seat, which is also used for tots, as well as 2 large swings themselves. To add, in response to the neighbors that wanted to see a play structure there, we added the house as to add an element of imaginative play that could be associated and easily incorporated into the area. It doesn't have a fall zone, which most play equipment does. Yes, that was basically our addition there to add more imaginative play to that area. With the playground itself, it's an either or, a play structure or a swing, just because the size of the fall zone in that area dictates that is what it is. So for historical purposes and for the majority of the attendees of the meeting, the swing was the way to go. And not just a tot swing, but a real swing to bring back the old school style that was there. So
Yeah. Okay. And I presume that you didn't really look at designs that had dog areas in there. So if not, I'm not going to ask you to speculate now. But with the hill and with the turf, it looks, and the narrow area over here, it looks unlikely as a place where you could put it. But
yes, I would agree. It's a small area. It would be a very small space. I think if they had an opportunity to do it, it would be that area right along the street. I don't know if that's the greatest place to have a little tiny dog park with a little fence around it, but that would be the location of this park to do it. But I don't think for the size, for the response from the neighborhood, that it's something for this park. So.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Ashland?
A couple of questions and comments. I almost think we need to do a little bit of balancing of the history of the park with the swings as well as the needs of the new families. I was struck by the email comments. Just that's a lot of new families with young kids. Would the CIP allow for adding a slightly larger or a bit more play equipment? For example, the playhouse here is very nice, but there's one at Briones Park which is similar to this but a little raised, and although it's for ages 2 to 5, it's really enjoyed by older kids as well, and its really own footprint is only slightly larger than what you have here. Is that something that there's room in the CIP for increasing? I mean, I understand the community feedback as well, but I think that maybe it was a little bit limited given that so many new families have moved in since then.
We can look at different options for the playhouse to add more amenities to it, so that's definitely an option.
Okay, thanks. And also, I was also wondering about the picnic table, because it's so nice to be able to have a birthday party with some cupcakes and balloons at this park. And if people are using the benches for that purpose anyway, it seems like it would be worth considering, although it is small and we would have to play with the layout a little bit. It seems like it might not even take up too much more room than we're already using, and would really add to, a nice, clean, dry place to set your snack that people aren't sitting on at the same time.
Yes, we did show a table in the original design, and the community members, the neighbors that attended both meetings were not in favor of having a picnic bench in the park itself.
Okay, yeah, I just wonder about so many new young families moving in and still more coming in, that did we really get representative feedback there? Or if there's any way to incorporate the feedback from those new members?
That would be up to the commission to request either having another meeting or allowing them to feedback. I think that their feedback is that they would like to see play equipment there. Again, I would reiterate that the play equipment would be tot age play equipment. It would not be a very extravagant play structure itself. There is Del Medio Park as well as the Wilkie Way Park that do provide many options of play structures at those parks as well.
I visited today, and it is a stark contrast, and the greenery here is so beautiful, and it's so rubberized over at Del Medio Park, so if you want that, but I'm just wondering if we could do a little bit of balancing, although Because when you have, young kids and you're heading out to the closest park, sometimes you're really only there 20 or 30 minutes before somebody has to go home. So just wondering if we could balance those needs a little bit. Might be worth looking at something like we have over at Briones, because although it's got the young age range, I've just seen it used all the way up to, middle school age. They still cluster around there plenty of time.
I would say that I think this is something that we could address too in the actual master plan itself. I believe that the community that was built there does not have ample space, green space, for the housing that was built there. They were required to have green space. I can't say it's very well developed as far as green space goes, or very large to meet the demand of the housing that was there. So that's, again, something to address with that. And I think there was a missed opportunity there that could have provided a little bit more open space that would have lessened the impact on Monroe Park and perhaps provided a play structure at that location. So something to think about in the future, I would say.
Yeah, it's really overshadowed by that hulking development right out on El Camino. Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Markovich?
I like this design the way it is. It looks like a lot of thought was put into it. I don't see adding any more tot-sized play equipment would actually be beneficial, because at some point you're gonna have that tipping point of just too much. And I like the way it's laid out now, mixed in with the trees and the green. I think it's a good design.
I also like the design. I especially like the sand, and I really especially like the sand underneath the swing. This is exactly the kind of middle ground I've been looking for in many previous park designs, where you could have an accessible swing access as well as sand on the ground under the swing, so I'm really happy to see that. I also agree that I also like the current selection of amenities. I think that area is facing a lot of new density. I know I've been to Del Medio Park as well. It has very intense use, and it's fabulous. They've managed to squeeze in a tremendous amount of cool stuff in a very small space, but it is a very different tone and experience. And I think it's nice, and there aren't a lot of parks around here, so I think the valuable thing about Monroe is that it's calm and peaceful. And yes, toddlers are not always calm and peaceful, but that's it. It's a little different, and they do have that Great Hill is really great for young kids. I like the playhouse, because I think for that age group in particular, it stimulates a lot of creative play that's interactive as well as side by side. And I won't go on. I like the current design.
I think it's for the Playhouse itself that we can reach out to that new development there and have the opportunity to select some options for that Playhouse as well, to expand the imaginary play of it, maybe make it a little bit larger and select a little bit larger ones. So I think there is some more outreach that we can do there as far as the selection of the equipment that goes, that can provide, I think, a little bit more variety to the play that they're looking for the park. So,
great. Any other comments?
Can I ask another clarification question to Peter Jensen? How does the signage work for the ages? On the tot swing is clearly, is that up to age 2? And how about for the bigger swings? Is there like separate signage on each side of the structure?
No, there's just one sign that's associated with it that basically calls out the swing and how it's the age appropriate use that should be using it. So.
And it's 2 to 5 even for the big swings?
No, it's 2 to 5 for just the bucket swing. The accessible swing, of course, can be used by tots as well as other kids basically using it. Doesn't really have an age restriction to it at all. And then the other side will be used for older kids. not the Todd H.
So it's signed separately?
Yeah, it's on one sign, but it's, yeah.
I see.
It's one sign that basically discusses either one of them, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
One more question for Deirdre. Do we still have homeless problems in Monroe Park? A couple years ago, there were homeless people hanging out there all the time, and I haven't seen quite as much recently.
Yeah, I mean, we do. We have various homeless people. We have people who live out of their cars in our neighborhood, and we have a very compassionate neighborhood, and we know who the people are who are living out of their cars, and we just tolerate it. I don't really hear a lot of complaints about it, and people come and go. We've had people who use Miller to park their camping vans that they're living out of. So it hasn't gotten worse, so I've lived there for now about 13 years, and you know, I just think if it got worse, it would reach a tipping point, but the fact that it hasn't gotten worse, people just don't seem that upset about it. I mean, we have some mentally ill people within our own neighborhood who use that park as a camping ground, and we know who they are, and they're pretty docile, and they do hang out, but they seem to not be scary looking. So I think we have to be careful about what we do in the park because we don't want to reach the tipping point. So I don't know exactly. I think good light. I think that there's enough activity, that some major walking, biking. I want to say to everyone that it's on the bike route. So the bike bridge is just a half a block from the park, and so there's constant pedestrian traffic and bike traffic up and down Miller Avenue, right in front of this park, and I think that helps a lot.
Okay. So the reason I ask about the homeless, just because I know in the past there's been a lot of homeless activity there. These benches, are they just flat, or do they have the armrests that prevent people from sleeping on the benches?
It is just flat.
Okay. And the neighborhood is okay with that?
You know, people really were, because right now we have these long 15-foot flat benches, and people love these benches, and people are not interested in tables. And if you go and visit the park, it's hard to imagine exactly how to make the tables work because it's such a small park. I think if someone could come up with a design and say this is how it might work, maybe you'd get more interest, but the way it was designed before, people just weren't interested. So I think people don't worry about the sleeping hasn't been a big problem with these massively long benches, and so I would be a little bit loath to bring in a different style. I mean, maybe the next time this park is redone, if homelessness gets worse, then you'd have to do that. But I'd say because it's not bad now, that's like a intervention that might not be quite needed. That's how I would say it.
So if down the road, let's say a couple of years from now, we find out there's homeless people sleeping on every bench and the neighborhood doesn't like it, is it easy to retrofit the benches that you're providing?
Yes, those can be retrofitted. Most of them, it's a fairly simple modification.
Okay, very good.
And I just want to, I so appreciated what Peter said about the density coming into our neighborhood. It's massive, the massive development, and they didn't provide for that development enough amenities, and there's only so far you can stretch Monroe Park. And I think that we just have to look at it as a whole and understand all the amenities that are serving that neighborhood, and that even the little kids do grow up. And I think it's really nice to have a small park that can serve some multiple ages.
So is that everything? Is that the kind of feedback you're looking for?
I think so. Just to double check with the commission, our intention is to bring this back next month, hopefully with a little outreach that Peter mentioned, to see if we can make some slight modifications to that play structure to incorporate some ideas from this newer community that's moved in. And then our intention to come back again the end of next month with the park improvement ordinance. Are there any other concerns that the commission has that really feels like we would need to follow up before you could put your support behind it?
I would just suggest that water fountain, that is that a new water fountain or an existing water fountain?
It's new.
It's new. So if you're putting in a new water fountain, it'd be great if you'd stick a spigot down low.
That is the
for
plan.
Play. Great.
That's become our standard now that we're utilizing in all our parks.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, that gets us to item number 6, discuss and plan for the annual commission retreat, which is scheduled for March 7th. That's Friday from 11 to 3:30, I think, right? And we're going to meet, where would you like to meet?
We'll meet at the Interpretive Center at Foothills Park. And so the first hour will be a walk, a hike, not a long one, but from there we'll go to the maintenance shed for the open space rangers, and behind that is the 7.7 acres that is currently not parkland, dedicated parkland, and the commission wanted to take a tour of that site, so we'll do that and then make our way back to the Interpretive Center. And the reason we're doing that is there's a class that had booked the center until noon, so we'll get in there at noon, begin with lunch together, and then start formally the retreat.
Are we going to cause a parking crisis down there if there are people already engaged in something? No.
I don't think so.
Okay. So I guess I'm none for this item. I don't really have a lot to say about it. As I mentioned last month, what I'd like to do is go through a list of issues that we anticipate being involved in, want to be involved in, but I'd like to spend the bulk of our time talking about ad hocs, clarifying how we want to handle them, which issue items we want an ad hoc for as opposed to a full commission, and kind of trying to figure out a strategy for dealing with the variety of kinds of ad hoc work we have, some that's staff initiated, some that's commissioner initiated, and some that's sort of just individual commissioner interest. And I'd like to find a way to better connect the ad hocs to staff, liaise to a staff representative, so that that's a partnership that goes throughout the entire ad hoc process. I'd also like to talk about scheduling kind of more regular ad hoc reports, maybe try to anticipate over the course of the year where we're going to have things fall out, and just generally how to make them work better, and also figure out who wants to be representing what issues and how to move forward on that. And that was my only thought about the retreat. Anybody else have comments about it? Okay. Next item is the ad hoc committee and liaison updates. I know we have an update from the dog group.
Abby and I met with Darren Anderson a few weeks ago and discussed opportunities for dog exercise areas. And we came up with that Greer is the best possibility for, as well as maybe taking another look at Piers Park for shared usage, because we already have a lot of the infrastructure in place at Greer. And possibly implement a pilot program there with signage that states that if the animals aren't picked up after, then it would be an end to the pilot program, just to make sure that, we want to make sure that the dogs have a good time and that the ball players would have a good time, type of thing. Also, we discussed Mitchell Park, and that was already vetted by the city. It would cost about $500,000 to fix that up, make it slightly bigger, and just make 500,000.
What would that 500,000 do?
It would be a complete renovation and of the existing dog park.
And so what surface would that be?
Can I chime in on that one?
Go
Darren
for it.
Anderson, Open Space Parks and Golf. The $500,000 figure was originally kind of submitted without there was no original design. It was in the initial phases of a CIP request. And we said, I'm getting a lot of requests from the public to do something with the dog park here. It's our biggest dog park, and it's old and not in very good shape. And so with the litany of different possibilities, from amenities to synthetic turf, that site suffers from historically poor performing natural turf. There's only 0.25 acres of natural turf there. It takes a tremendous beating and is in very poor shape at the end of every year. Consequently, there's a 2-month closure period every year to try to get it to grow back. And about 2.5 weeks after it opens up, it's quickly torn down to mud, which is very frustrating for our users and as well as our staff. And so amongst the different things on the table, synthetic turf was one, going with the DG or mulch was another, but we also talked about increasing the size of it by moving the fence and adding some other amenities that were popular at the one that went into Shoreline some years ago now, but it's got a large shade structure and a few other things like that. So 500,000 was kind of a placeholder until a more thoughtful design and outreach had been put in place. But at the same time, we implemented this process of the master plan. And we said, well, rather than doing a one-off at Mitchell, let's make sure that's the right way to go. We'll have the master plan kind of help explain where we should be prioritizing it. So the 500,000 was never fully vetted.
He actually finished my report, so thank you, Darren.
On a related note, Deirdre mentioned about the small park over in Palo Alto, or in Mountain View, just off San Antonio, where the old Sears Automotive was. And so I've been running by there now, changed my path, and and so I've stopped in a couple times and talked to people and say, how do you like this? And they rave it, they love it. It's very small, but they said it gets packed at times, but so far it's been big enough that they're happy with it. There was a concern that this turf, they didn't know how well that would, especially during the hot summer, will it be smelly? And I'm not sure what type of cleaning, whether they hose that off every morning or if it just whenever it gets stinky. Yeah, so that's going to be a good test case to see how well turf works in a dog park. Do you know, is turf being used in dog parks nationwide? Is that common?
It is a increasingly used subsurface. It all depends on, for example, we visited the 12, I think it is, dog parks in San Jose, and they've got everything from synthetic turf to mulch to DG to bare dirt. It was just all over the map, and all different elements of success too. I mean, there's so many variables that make for the success of a spot. So yes, to answer that question, artificial is used. I think it's Booksir Dog Park was right near my home. I've been monitoring that for about the last 6 years, and it's held up very nicely. The synthetic turf is held up really well. Doesn't suffer from smell, issues from the urine. But it was very, very costly for such a small dog park. I think they dropped at the time, and this was maybe 8 years ago, somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $1 million. So very, very expensive for such a small spot, but it was divided between large dog and small dog, and had a very nice fence that's buried in the ground so you can't dig under, and very thoughtful design.
Okay. And just so you know, the purpose of our ad hoc was to look at existing sites where we would have shared use, because we really don't have an opportunity right now or budget to build out anything. I mean, we really don't have a space. We just talked about 2 parks tonight where it wouldn't work, and we know El Camino came up. So that was really our goal. What parks do we have right now? Where would it make sense? And if we did implement a pilot program where we're really putting the onus on the community who wants off-leash dog opportunities, that the onus is to keep it clean and make sure that everybody is well behaved during the specific set hours of that off-leash opportunity, and really look at it overall and see if this is something that we could implement in different parts of the city ongoing.
2 questions for the subcommittee. Did you take any field trips to any other towns or investigate what other towns are doing, particularly on the maintenance of a shared use area? And secondly, of those that you looked at in the city as options, which ones did you rule out and why? So I think, for example, of the Baylands Park.
Let me just interrupt for a second. I'm not sure it's kosher to have a whole discussion about this because we didn't agendize it as a discussion. It's just an update. Can we have this conversation next week at the retreat when we talk about, or next month when we talk about?
I was just asking what they investigated. I don't think that's out of order, is it? It's just,
I don't know.
If you didn't investigate it, you didn't. But if you did, you'd be reporting on it.
I couldn't find the one in Mountain View that Deirdre was I tried to find it. I couldn't find it.
Oh.
But, so,
It's
no.
a little off San Antonio. You have to go into the complex. But if you remember where the old...
Yeah, I'm not going to take this on.
Okay.
Yeah, forget it.
Ed was asking about shared use, so maybe try the one in Menlo Park.
On Willow Road. I've been there. And there's specific hours, and it's a ball field during normal hours. And then I think early in the morning, there's 2 hours, and then 2 hours late in the day where you're allowed to have a dog off leash. The Baylands, should we talk about? We talked about the Baylands, and I'm a dog lover. I have a dog. He's my guy. But the thing with regard to the Baylands is protecting what naturally occurs there, and dogs do go off path. And they can create some damage. And we have had many conversations about burrowing owls and indigenous species that are need to be protected down there, and we just didn't think that that would be an appropriate spot. It's not to say that we can't look at it further and investigate, but during our initial conversation, we just thought, because there are so many environmental issues down there, it didn't make sense.
Ed, were you talking the Baylands ballpark or the Baylands?
The athletic field.
Didn't talk about the ballpark.
We didn't talk about the ballpark, but I think if you want to discuss this, we should agendize it for a further meeting.
Can I just make a comment to the ad hoc?
Not if it's substantive. I think we're
Oh,
getting
I was-
off track here because
okay.
it's not an agendized item. So I would really rather, I would love to have a discussion about it, but let's put it on the agenda for another month. Okay. Any other ad hoc or liaison updates? So that gets us to comments and announcements. Go ahead.
One of them was, I went to the El Camino Park, the community meeting, and it was their typical mix. There was about 10 representatives from the city of Palo Alto. There was 2 members representing 1 lacrosse and 1 soccer, and 3 residents. So we definitely outnumbered them. But they were very on the ball. They asked lots of good questions. 101 Alma was represented by, I think, the one retired engineer that was living there, because he came loaded for bear. He had lots of really good questions about the lighting and light spillage, and he definitely knew his stuff. I went away feeling really good about that meeting. It was very positive. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was I went to the ethics training last week, and the one thing that stuck out in my mind that is new, and it was at the very end of the meeting, and I don't think a lot of people caught it, was the press will, if they see that you're texting in a meeting, they can request to see your text, because maybe you're texting your kid at, hey, it's time to go to bed, or you could be texting another commissioner saying, vote this way. They don't know, but they can request it under the Freedom of Information Act. So just be aware. That was it.
I just had a couple. One, I wanted to thank Ed Lowing for being there, and other commissioners for the golf course site and design review at the council in early February. It was a big milestone to get that approved in the EIR and the Park Improvement Ordinance. So now we have one final hurdle to overcome, which is to get the regulatory permits from the water board and the Fish and Wildlife and the Army Corps, and most of them are in line except for the water board, and they have still some concerns. Not about our project. In fact, they love our project and what we're doing with the golf course, but with the levee project. So we are making progress. We've gone over there and met with them in Oakland, and but time will tell. The next few weeks will be particularly important. The city managers involved, as well as council members, to try and move this along so both projects can begin in the next few months. But we'll have to see, and we'll keep you updated.
At what point is this going to start delaying the project?
We hope to begin in May, so May 1st. Everything else is ready. So if we can get the, we're going to go out and bid the project even without the permits, just so when they come in and when the permits do come in, eventually we're going to be ready to go at that time. So so to your question, if the permits are not in by end of April, it starts to delay the project. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. Last night, the City Council talked about Cubberley. Chair Headley was here until 11 o'clock with us. But it was very interesting. It was the City Council giving staff direction on negotiating the new lease with the school district on the Cubberley site. And I think maybe you saw the staff report on that, but it was the key component of that was to remove the covenant not to develop, which is a $1.8 million commitment to the school district over the last lease in some 20 years or something, and to remove that and remove the funding and apply that funding towards Cubberley maintenance and the future of Cubberley. Exactly how that's going to be spent is to be determined, but the council approved that unanimously. There was one sticking point, and that was the Ventura site, and the staff report had several recommendations or guidelines for negotiating the new lease, one of which was to remove the buyback clause for the Ventura site, which the school district currently has, and which is preventing the city from really investing in the property in any significant way. But several council members were uncomfortable with that, thinking that the school district needed to have the opportunity to buy that back. So that was a split vote on that particular item. Did you want to add anything, Jennifer, on? You were there, and you. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to mention the Magical Bridge is moving along as well. I think there's a community meeting Saturday at 11 o'clock at Cubberley in H1. Their fundraising is my understanding, is going very well, and they're at a point where we can really make this happen. And the plan is to come back to the Parks and Rec Commission in April with a park improvement ordinance to move that one along. We also had our summer camp registration, and I mention it because it's always a big deal for the department. And summer camps and aquatic revenues are up 40% over last year, which is really exciting. And it's in part because the school district is no longer offering a summer enrichment program. They're offering much smaller, academic-focused, remedial-type summer enrichment program because they found that they really cannot charge for those programs anymore. So I think that's part of it. Plus, we knew that was coming, so we added some additional programming as a result. But so we have really good numbers early on here, which we're very happy about. And the last thing I had was just we had a question come in from Commissioner Reckdahl about the drought and some of the thinking that's happening right now. Darren's going to touch on that.
I just had a couple of updates preceding that one. Eleanor Pardee project is moving forward. They're working on the playground installation right now, and about 4 weeks to have the entire project completed and opening that park back up. Bixby, this is the capital improvement project to look at the Bixby Hills. Thomas Reed and Associates is the contractor we've hired on to do the environmental and help us with the public process, and that's just getting off. They're reviewing documents right now. Public meetings to come soon, but no dates yet. And the commission will be notified as soon as those are set. Commissioner Reckdahl had sent a couple of questions related to the drought, and I'll read the questions and kind of give a synopsis of our take on them. The first one was, how would reduced water availability affect Palo Alto parks? It's a good question, something we've been considering for a long time, not just based on the drought, but really in anticipation of rate increases. It might be a little self-serving to be thinking of it that way, but for many years we've had the Utilities Department give us a anticipated rate increase, and it's just astronomical. The rates continually grow up. You know, 1 year would be 15%, the next 7, another 7 the year after that. And for the amount of turf we've got or irrigated areas, those are really significant impacts to the budget. And so for the longest time now, we've been looking wherever possible to either convert irrigated areas to hardscapes or mulched areas, or switch the plant palette to a native species that could be drought tolerant and survive, you know, typically with an establishment period of irrigation and then left on its own. Switching to higher degree or percentage of recycled water over potable. And a good example of that was at the golf course and the Baylands Athletic Center, which is on the same water line. So historically, it had been closer to a 60-40% blend, 60% recycled water, 40% potable. And at the time, and this kind of touches on one of the questions, I'll elaborate a little bit more on the nature of the recycled water, but maybe this is the time to blend into it. At the time when we were 60-40, if you had gone any higher on the ratio of recycled to potable, you would burn out the turf because the total dissolved solids, the TDS of that recycled water, was really high, really meaning there's lots of salts in that water and the turf doesn't do well. Through a series of different programs that our water quality and the neighbors involved in our water quality have made to improve the line. Basically, it was seepage into the line through breaks, in large part in Mountain View's area, and they've recently fixed that, has brought that TDS level, that total dissolved solids, down to a number, let's say we had been at 920, now we're closer to 740. So a significant drop down in the salts that are in this water that allow us to adjust that ratio basically to the highest that we can get away with without damaging any turf. So now we're closer to 80-20 blend, and which is really good. That's the goal. Use as much recycled and as little potable as possible, because the water quality plant currently discharges something like 24 million gallons a day of recycled water, and a lot of it now goes to Mountain View because that's where they've extended the line. But for the longest time, we had several million a day just getting discharged into the bay, right out in the Baylands, kind of wasted, if you will, because they've got to do something with the water. So the more we could utilize, the better from that term, as well as reduce our potable use. We believe with the switch at the golf course to a different turf type, Paspalum, that you've probably heard of us talking about now, that every time we discuss that project, we think we can go to 100% use of recycled water for large sections of the golf course that will have the Paspalum. The greens will still be on the potable line because it's a different type of grass that wouldn't thrive on that kind. But the Baylands Athletic Center, we believe can go on the 100%. So those are some of the steps we've already taken, which kind of addresses, is there anything, your second question was, is there anything we could do now to prep for the summer? And I think my answer is we've already done it, and it was predicated on these increased rates. So it was making sure we have weather-based irrigation systems. It was making all these landscaping choices that would set us up for either converting to recycled water or reducing when possible. Another example would be up at Foothills Park. This was during a budget crunch. It wasn't associated with water at all, but that was one area where we said, if we have to come up with 25,000, we can cut off some of the edges of the turf that are under oak trees that we currently irrigate that don't really want that. The oak tree doesn't thrive with grass underneath it. We just mulched that and removed a couple heads, and we're able to save $25,000 on water through those techniques. So I guess what I'm getting at is we've taken these steps all along to try to get us as lean as we could be on our water usage. I think we're pretty tight right now and looking good. I guess the next step of the answer is, well, if you were restricted on your water use, what would be the steps you'd take? And I can't get too into the details there other than to say it would probably be some sort of step down of the least impactful irrigation cuts first, which might look like cuts to median, irrigations for medians or non-essential turf. That might be in front of a library, perhaps, where you've got turf that's not used for play. Perhaps it's not in the most aesthetically impactful area. Those kind of areas would be first, then you just kind of work your way down. I hope that answers that question.
The follow-up question would be, you said you brought the salinity down to 720. Is there any hope of getting it further down, or is that
I did talk, your third question was, what's the long-term plans for the irrigation using recycled water? It was a conversation with utilities and water quality who are responsible for that. They do have a goal. I think they're shooting for like 700, I believe. So we're close to that. And there's always hopes that you can get lower and lower and lower. But at that rate, I think you can, they've done ongoing experiments with irrigating a stand of redwood trees in the water quality plant using recycled water versus potable. So I think it's like 8 trees on potable, 8 on recycled, and how they compare. And it was very favorable. It's one of the species that's sensitive to that kind of thing. But through their analysis, water quality staff at least is feeling that this water could be used to sustain even sensitive species like that. I know there are certain members of Canopy and other tree advocates who would disagree with that. So I don't think the science is fully out and that's fully resolved, which kind of, again, ties me into that third question of what's the plan with the recycled water. It's currently on the EIR review. I passed around a document that shows kind of a phased response, and it'll show phase 1, I believe, where we've got this existing recycled water line that goes down East Bayshore Road, or up Embarcadero from our treatment plant, down East Bayshore Road towards Mountain View. And phase 2 expands off that, and I think it goes, let's see, it actually goes up East Meadow to Cowper, and eventually to Page Mill and branches off. The nice part is they've highlighted various areas. I don't know what the cutoff will be. This is still in draft phase. This hasn't been approved. The EIR is not approved. But wherever that line goes, where there are parks or sites that are within a reasonable realm, they can run lines to it and essentially irrigate those areas with recycled water. And some of the ones that are on the list that I believe I passed around that would benefit us would be Cubberley Community Center, El Carmelo School for Meadow School, Hoover Park, JLS, Mitchell Park, Ramos Park, and perhaps some of the medians on Page Mill, El Camino, and Turman. The time frame for this project, again, still in the EIR phase review, so I don't know what will come of it. But utilities seem to think it was a 2 to 4 year time frame before the recycled water line would reach the Stanford Research Center, which is, I think, the phase 2 on that map that I passed around. And that's the information I had to share on the, those water questions.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other announcements? Other commissioners have announcements? Okay, I have a few. Anybody who didn't make it to the ethics training last week, please remember to do the online training, and there's a link on the email that went around in the near future. And then when you've completed that, you'll have to print out a certificate and mail it into Rana. I don't know if you've done it online before. Also, the Form 700 is due April 1st. That's the financial reporting form. So,
what does that do?
April 1st. So put that on your to-do list. Finally, was there a resolution on the joint council session? There was a proposal that we have a joint council session in May, which seemed very early to me. I don't know if there's...
Oh, I sent to the clerk's office that we would like a later date, and I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, I know we did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not locked into May yet.
I don't think so.
Good. Finally, I had one other thing to report on. I went to the City Council's Infrastructure Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, where they're talking about the big backlog from the IBRC report and whether to do a bond or a tax or whatnot. It sounds like they have recommended that we pay for the public safety building out of city funds rather than going out for a bond for it. And they had a whole list of all this is the public safety building, as that's such a high priority for the city. But among the items on the list of backlog that they're trying to fund were a number of parks and rec things, like the parks catch-up. I think there was $8.9 million in parks catch-up, and 3.6 for the Bixby Park improvements, as well as the bike and pedestrian master plan. Those things, it looks like the current thinking, and I don't think council has considered this yet as a whole, is to push those things out and fund those through, rather than with the general fund, since that's going to primarily go to other items. Those would be funded by possibly a transient occupancy tax, the hotel tax. So that's the current thinking. Those were the items that I think polled as the most supported for additional funding through some revenue raising process or fundraising process. So that's my update there. I don't know what the next step, I guess the next step is the council will consider it as a whole, but that's where our things stand, is sort of pushed out to whatever fundraising mechanism they pursue as of now. And that is all that I had. So I would entertain a motion to...
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes.
Status on Scott Park, where's that? Did the council approve Scott Park?
Oh, whoops.
Has that gone to council already? I'm not sure that that's... I think he's working on the final staff report, and it'll go on consent.
I not heard it go through, but I don't know if I missed it or not.
Yep. And do we need to agenda planning?
Right.
Which can be quick, but what I took note of was a couple of park improvement ordinances, or actually there could be 3 next month. Hopkins Park, Monroe Park, and I think El Camino Park might be coming back, given the lighting changes. And then... Meeting number 19. Yeah, number 19. And then maybe debriefing the retreat, just making sure that we are all on the same page with whatever decisions are made on the 7th. That's what I had, but there could be other things.
I haven't talked to Stacy about this, but hopefully we could do a website item for March as well.
And
yeah.
So the website. And Walter Passmore, Catherine just mentioned, wants to bring back the urban master plan for another update.
The urban what?
The urban tree master plan, the urban forest master plan, sorry, it's late.
Oh, that's coming back to us
Urban forest master
again?
plan, yeah.
Okay.
No, this is separate.
All right. Now.
Yeah, it is a lot, although you've seen Hopkins and Monroe, so maybe they'd be fairly quick items. And you've seen El Camino a few times.
It might be completely different by now. Do you have a second? Second. All right, we're adjourned.